Okay, so we are on and welcome people to the launch series. I am Olivia Angelescu and together, my mistake. Today I'm here together with Catie Harris and I'm looking forward to sharing your launch story with you because I think Catie has like the perfect example that when you find when you nail down your perfect audience for you, you can grow your business pretty quickly. So welcome, Catie.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know you have prepared some cool details about your launches, and I can't wait to start. So,
Great.
what's your story? I mean, how come you have this particular story ideas? And I want to mention that what Catie does, she teaches nurses, right,
Mhm.
how to build and grow their own dream business. And I think it's awesome. And please tell us all about it.
Yeah, so the idea came to me because I had set up my own businesses and, I saw a need out there. First of all, I see nurses that are really burnt out and they leave the profession because they're tired and they're exhausted and, they're taken for granted or they've run themselves into the ground and they really have nothing to show for it or not a whole lot to show for it. So they get really frustrated, really angry. And I had found that in my own business, I was so much happier and I was actually using more of my nursing skills in my business. So I started helping other friends who wanted to come up with their own ideas and I would help them generate ideas. And it was just something that I love to do. So I thought, well, this is something I could do as a business as well. So looking at my past experiences in my previous businesses, I initially started with a much different group than where I am now, but that really kind of came with just the evolution of the business. So my first niche was working with nurse practitioners, but nurse practitioners tend to start clinics, and I've never really started a clinic, so it didn't feel like a really good fit. And really what I was trying to do was show nurses how they already had the knowledge and the skill set for a business model, and all they needed to do is put it into a tight system and market it. And obviously it's not that easy, but I wish everything were that easy. But that was the thought process and kind of the evolution of where I started to where I ended up.
Wow, that's great. So basically, you are teaching like a very specific audience, a very specific part of the market, which is people worldwide wanting to start their own businesses. You teach them that they can tap in something they already have and something they have already built over the years in their very specific career that has nothing to do with business, right?
Right.
But still, they can tap into this and use it very well to build and grow their businesses.
Yes. And, it was one of those things that getting into entrepreneurial circles, I would see these people that maybe had a personal experience with thyroid disease or had a personal experience with back pain or something, and they would develop businesses out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it would, to me, I thought, well, I mean, that's all we do all day. I mean, nurses have, the average nurse who has 10 years experience has over 10,000 hours of touch points with patients.
Wow, that's a lot.
With that experience is really, you just got to harness it.
And this actually goes very well with, the general like principle. Before starting a business and you are like an expert in a topic, if you have already 10,000 hours of experience with that particular topic. So if you have this in any field, you are an expert and you can start consulting or freelancing or whatever, a service business. So I really love this, and I'm pretty curious right now about your why, like your big why. What's the why? What's the story behind you wanting to set up your business?
Well, I wanted to start my own business, or the type of business that
Your own business.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I've been a nurse for 20 years, and kind of the things that I just talked about were my experiences. And one of my blog posts that's more popular than others is this question where I'm like, I realized that I was a really, really angry nurse, like just really angry at everything. You know, the littlest thing would happen and it would set me off. And it got to a point where I'm like, what is going on? And I ended up getting into this huge fight with one of my attending physicians. And my personality, I'm very soft-spoken, quiet, just introverted. I'm the type of person that, you know, you would never look at me and say, oh, that person's going to cause a ruckus or whatever. So I got into this huge fight with this attending physician, and it blew out of proportion. And I ended up in the HR department taking anger management classes. And I was like, how did this happen? You know, how did I go from nice, sweet, introverted Catie to anger management classes? And I thought, well, I need a break. I need to step back and reassess what's going on and figure out, what am I so angry about, right? So part of it really it came down to, I felt like I was doing all of this work, going above and beyond, but never actually getting validated for it. And, you know, nobody would ever, not that they needed to, but say, gee, thanks, Catie, or whatever. Like, that never came out of anybody's mouth. It was just an expectation that if I were going to work, I got paid 40 hours a week, but if I work 60 hours a week, it just became an expectation. Well, oh, you're leaving early today? Well, no, I'm leaving on time. You know, and it was just one of those things that really, after a while, really grates on you. And one of my friends said it the best when he said the nurse practitioners, which is what I am, in a lot of hospitals are like disempowered residents. So I would see the residents grow and become attendings and go off and make more money and not necessarily do less work, but they just had something else, whereas I was always kind of stuck and I was on this hamster wheel and just not going anywhere. I really didn't have anything to show for it. And I thought, well, the only way out of this is to do something else. So that's when I thought I got to find something else to do. So that's when I started looking for business ideas, and I set up some separate businesses that I enjoyed, and I did them on the side, but you know, I wanted to do something more full-time that I could really devote all my effort and energy into.
Wow. So I'm really speechless right now, and that's a rare thing for me because I also recognize myself in what you're talking about, and I've never been a nurse, but I've worked for so many years in for big corporations and then in management consulting, and I also felt at some point that I want to build my career around my life and not the other way around. So I admire very much the fact that you basically recognize the fact that you need to change something in your career, and you actually took action and changed that. So I think it's amazing. And how many years did this change take for you?
Too many, for sure. And so, like I said, I've been a nurse for 20 years, and I was a nurse practitioner for 10 years. So I was able to see several cycles of residents come and go, and that's where, you know.
But from the moment that you decided that you need to do something else with your career, from the moment that you ended up in the management resources office with the recommendation of taking anger management classes, and you really had your initial business set up, how much time did this take for you?
It took about 3 years, and part of that is that I ended up taking another job somewhere else, thinking that would be the solution, and it was fine. I had this new learning curve for about 1.5 years, and then it was just the same thing again. The feelings of frustration came right back. So I realized that changing position, changing hospital, changing doctors wasn't the answer. And that's when, at that year and a half mark, I thought I need to get serious about this and start putting some effort into it. So it took another few months to come up with my idea of what I was going to do, and then started it back in 2010.
Okay. So 2010, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is like 8 years ago?
Yes, that was the very first business. So the very first business started in 2010. My current business started in 2016.
Okay, so 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And once you started your first business, let's say, how it was for you to be a newbie at this business thing?
I mean, it was okay, because the first business I started was just freelancing my own services out to surgeons as a first assist in the operating room. So, I mean, that part was easy. There's again, you still have a limited number of time, a limited number of surgeons that I could work with. So that part was easy. It wasn't until I started the business that I'm in now that I really discovered, well, the business before this one was, it was a coordinated care, it was a transitional care company. And it ran into a lot of roadblocks because I didn't know how to market. And then I realized I need that skill set. So I had to go back and get that skill set. And then my current company really came out of searching for marketing skills. It came out of that learning process.
And now, going from starting your business, like the business you have right now, to the point where you were launching something, a product or a service for the first time. So what exactly did you launch first?
So yeah, so I started Nursepreneurs in 2016, and I wouldn't launch it for another year, because it took me a long time to really feel like I wasn't a fraud doing it, right? So I had to work through a lot of just mindset issues.
Imposter syndrome, yeah. I think it's very fashionable. Yeah. Imposter syndrome in the online business world today. So
yeah, and it took a lot. You know, there's always one more thing that I didn't know that I had to study, and I had to do this, and I had to do that, and it just got to the point where one of my mentors was like, "What are you doing?"
How many online courses have you signed up for?
Oh my gosh, a lot. I've spent a lot of money, because there's a lot of good marketing out there, and everything, it looks like that's the answer. If only I knew that, then yeah, I've spent over $10,000 on courses for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's like an average amount of money that I hear people spending. So, but just to make this clear for our audience, you don't necessarily have to spend this money, right? You can, at least I'm all for taking action, even if you feel you are not ready. So I also have, I'm a massive online course collector myself. But now, after going through all these trainings, I realized that if I would have started with something, with anything, like 3 years ago instead of 2 years ago, it would have worked. And I now realize that once you start, you gain clarity, and this moves you forward a lot of in like very quickly. So what were your launch objectives for this program that you launched?
I had some really big objectives. I thought I'd bring in tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and all I needed to do was drive enough traffic. But so that first launch was it actually, from my perspective at the time, it felt like a huge flop, because I had this unrealistic expectation of what my first launch would look like. And when I look back now, knowing what I know, I know that I actually did a very successful launch, although my numbers were teeny, but the math was there, right? Just having the right numbers driven to that webinar that I did would have amounted in much more sales. But I was very cautious, very unsure of myself and what I was doing.
So you mentioned a webinar and some numbers. So can you please walk me through like your whole launch strategy? I mean, I know that strategy might seem like a big word, but just your launch process, let's say. So how your launch process looked like at that time?
Okay, so I essentially did cold traffic without realizing that I should have probably built my list up first and nurtured them a bit and then done email marketing to them. So what I did was Facebook ads to cold traffic, and took the cold traffic through my webinar. And then after the webinar, there was some follow-up emails telling them that the course was about to close. If they wanted it, they had to get it now, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So the whole launch was about, I'm going to say it was 2 weeks long, which is probably a little bit long, especially for cold traffic. But so I had a warm-up series, then it was an hour-long webinar selling my course, and then about a week follow-up of cart closing. So all in all, I guess it was about a 2-week period. So that was the process to get them to buy. What I didn't realize was that cold traffic converts at a much lower rate. So getting tens of thousands of dollars in income wasn't going to come from like a $500 Facebook ad spend. It'd be nice. It'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yes.
$500 and 10,000. Yeah, I'd be like superstar.
Yes, and actually, what I see right now is that you had this initial launch. You obviously learned a lot while doing this launch, and then so what happened then? What happened in your second launch?
So
what you were doing in your first one?
Yeah, no, it took me a long time to get back to the second launch, because for the longest time I just thought, well, that, because I had 4 sales on that webinar, and at a $600 price point, my Facebook ads were covered, and so I essentially turned $500 into like $2,000, right? So that's actually a success.
Yes.
But I saw it as like the biggest failure for some reason. So I sat on it and I thought, well, I guess I just stink. I'm not a marketer. I'm a nurse. I don't know what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. So I had convinced myself of all of these things. And meanwhile, I have people going through my course and they're saying how great it is. And I have all these testimonials that are on the course board, and I just sat on them for at least 6 months. So it wasn't until later that year that I got it back together. And I thought, did more courses, trying to, ease the ego, and came up with a new webinar formula for driving cold traffic that was much more condensed. So now I do 3 days of Facebook ads, spend webinar on day 4, and then closing sequence for 3 days. And it works pretty good, and I know pretty quickly I'm going to convert people, and that is cold traffic. And then I do email marketing as well to my list.
So basically, today, I mean, in your thinking about your most recent launch for this program, you are still using the same strategy, like cold traffic from ads for 3 days, and then webinar, and then sales emails?
Yes.
And you are pretty successful with this?
Yes.
Because I think it's awesome today to be successful with a cold audience coming from ads and selling them. What's the current price point for your program?
The current price point is $997.
Okay, so selling like not a cheap program to a cold audience. This proves to me that, as I said before, when we are just starting this conversation, that I think it's all because at least the starting point, is because you really, really nail down your audience. I mean, I can only imagine that being so successful with cold traffic, with Facebook ads, comes from this.
Yes. And, it helps because I can identify nurses, because most of them will identify on Facebook as nurses. So, I have a very specific audience that I can tailor those ads to, and then they self-select into it. So anybody that's ever thought of having a business, or, it's just even crossed their mind, they end up registering for so I'll get like 500-600 people to sign up for one webinar every week, which is pretty impressive at like $1.50 per lead. I mean, that's how
per opt-in, you mean?
Yeah.
Because I've just read recently some comments in some Facebook group that I think we are kind in the same Facebook groups. So maybe you read this also, like people complaining that the costs for the ads on Facebook have increased dramatically, and they end up paying like $3 or $4 at least per opt-in. So, and my own experience is also with getting very, very good prices for Facebook ads, because I know my audience very well, and then I can target it very well. So you proved to me that even today, even if the competition in the Facebook ads field is very tough and getting tougher and tougher every day, you still can achieve some great numbers, and you are proof of that.
Yes.
That's great. So. What?
Yeah, I mean, the more you can get somebody to identify with your message or what you're saying, the lower your cost is going to be, for sure.
And this is like the secret for you. The so-called secret. The fact that you've been a nurse yourself, you've been to those challenging moments. You can very well make your audience identify with yourself because you've been in their shoes, right? And you know exactly how to address their pain points.
Right, exactly.
So, looking back at your first launch, because we are all about first launches here.
Yes.
What was your top challenge?
The top challenge, honestly, was just believing that I could do it, right? That I had enough knowledge and skill set to put a launch together. And the first time I did the launch, I was like, oh, there's so much to do. There's so many pieces to this. I got to write these emails and those emails and, put them in this order, and this has got to go off and that's got to trigger. And it was like this whole big shebang, right? And, when I did the webinar again, the second, third, fourth webinar, I thought, why was this such a big deal? All I had to do was put them in order in the email autoresponder. Why? And I was confused. I'm like, am I missing something? Did I forget to do something? Because, it was so much easier the second time around. I just made this huge deal out of putting it all together.
So basically, you're saying that you never know how it's going to be until you actually do it.
I mean, I can imagine some people that have like $1 million launch or something. There's probably a lot more moving pieces, but I have this like simple little launch. Like, it wasn't a big to do.
Yes, actually, I think that in today's online business world, we can actually make our launches as difficult or as easy as we want them to be. Right. So I personally know a lot of wonderful women who are launching several times per year, and they have several different products or services, and they make $1 or $2 million per year, and they are still one person doing everything. So I really think that the launch process is the same. I mean, the tools are pretty much the same. Yes, if you make more money from your launches, you can invest in some more effective tools. But basically, for me at least, the process is the same, even if you have a $1,000 launch or a $1 million launch. So I think people should really think about this. And as you said, not let their mindset be the top enemy of their launch. This is really important, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the one thing that'll stop you dead in your tracks. It'll stop you from progressing. You'll delay the launch. If you don't pick a date and tell people about it, then it's always kind of like, well, I'm not quite ready. Maybe I'll wait, or I did that this year. I just started my launch series again. I'm in the middle of the first one. It's going to be a 10-week series of week-long launches for 10 weeks. But I was supposed to do this back in April, and I couldn't get around to doing it. And at some level, like, what is more important than driving business to my business? Like, what am I doing?
And basically, what's more important than you building your career around your life as you initially wanted to, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, yes, I also have to remind myself this all the time. Like right now, I would have postponed this entire launch interview series that I'm planning to do for a long time, just because, as you can see, my office is not ready. But then I told myself, okay, so what? I mean, I'm sure that our audience is going to see the value in our talk here, even if only half of my bookshelves is half is empty and half is not. So I don't know.
And the funny thing is, I don't even think I would have noticed if you hadn't pointed it out.
You see. Okay, so looking back at your launch, what would be one thing that you would do differently today?
One thing, I think it really helps to just have a plan. I mean, that sounds so obvious and stupid, but a plan and some checklist with some dates on it. So, you need these things done by this point, and these things need to be done by this point, and then we're going to put it all together. I mean, it's how I operate now. I'll start from the end and work my way back to make sure that it can all get done. So just having that system in place has been much easier. So now I can put on 10 launches in a row, and it's not a big deal. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Starting Sunday, that's when launch 1 ends, and Monday my ads start up again. So, I know exactly what I need to do, and I don't have to stress over it, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel every week or redo everything. It's just I have these 3 things that I need to fix before the next ads go out, and boom, next launch.
Yeah, so basically what you are saying is that once you have a system in place, like even if it's a joke of a system, okay, even if you think it's a joke of a system, if you have some basic steps laid down and written on paper or something, I'm a very visual person, so I prefer to write everything, all the steps, all the dates, on a paper and stick it to my wall in front of me so that I can see it very clearly when I raise my head. But basically, and I agree with you that once you have like a laid down plan, a lot of the overwhelm and a lot of the launch anxiety goes away, right? Because then you can feel a sense of being in control in some form, and then you will be able to focus on your actual launch.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know that you are teaching nurses how to build their own business, but actually what you are teaching them is generally applicable to everybody out there, right? There are the basic marketing principles and the same steps that everyone can do to actually grow their business fast.
Yes.
So how can people read all about this? Where they can find you?
Well, they can find me on my website. I have free gifts and training there for anybody that goes there. That would apply to not just nurses, but anybody. And that's Catie Harris, CATIE.
And I'll put the link below the video so that everybody can check it out.
Great. So catieharris.com/training. And when you go to training, I have free webinars. I have free books on finding your business idea and selling sequence and just different ebooks that you can download for free.
That's great. And I can't wait to go check it out because I'm very curious at this point and I'm sure it's going to be something very helpful. So what would be one final piece of advice for someone who is only now thinking about launching something?
So my final piece of advice would really be just kind of the beginning and the end of your business. I allowed my launch to define me, and I saw it as a failure to begin with, right? So, a launch is an experience. It's about learning something, and I think you should optimize your learning, especially that first year. Like, use everything that you can to learn what you can, and then once you get a system in place, then you can scale it. But learning first and foremost, and taking a good 6 months to a year to learn the process, to learn your system, learn what works, and see everything as vital information that you need to scale your business. So that's the biggest piece of advice, and just do it.
I like this. So just do it, right?
Yeah.
You would be surprised once you take action and start seeing some small results. You would be surprised at how this can motivate you to take action further. And this basically is like a snowball effect, that basically your initial action propels you to move forward and reach your final objectives.
Right, because it's really just a math game. If you can sell one thing, you can sell 100 of them.
That's totally right. So thank you so much, Catie, for sharing your launch wisdom with me today. And I'm really looking forward to see your success in your future launches.
All right. Thank you so much, Olivia.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.